This is Piers Morgan, author of a new book called God Bless America, and I'm about to read you an extract from the book, which is the prologue, which kind of tees the whole thing up, really. I remember the first time I went to America vividly. It was 1984, and I was a 21-year-old show business hack on the Sun newspaper, and I'd been sent to New York to interview Sylvester Stallone. From the moment I arrived, I remember thinking how vast New York seemed, and how brash and exciting. The sheer power and energy of the place was quite overwhelming. This is back in the 80s. The streets were huge, the cars were even bigger, the people seemed physically bigger and so confident. America at the time was the world's undisputed superpower and getting bigger economically and financially and militarily every year. New York in particular radiated through the 80s cash, success and excitement. And I hated it. And I'll tell you why, because all the Americans I met were in the entertainment and legal business, and they all just seemed cocky and humorless and intense and aggressive. Now you may think pretty rich coming from me, but back then I was quite a sweet little boy. Their attitude towards Britain too seemed oddly dismissive, as indeed was their attitude to almost anywhere outside of America. For the next few years I made numerous further trips to New York, Miami, LA, all the big pumping business cities really. My attitude, if anything, hardened. America, it seemed to me back then, was just a big, loud, brash kind of place full of big, loud, brash kind of people. And while I enjoyed going, a few days was usually quite long enough for both of us. They didn't get my jokes, finding my typically British humour based on heavy sarcasm and irony and cheerful cynicism just rude or obnoxious or weird. They didn't get it. I in turn thought they were pretty ghastly, to be honest. A bunch of swaggering, self-interested isolationists. But then in the 90s, I went through a bit of a metamorphosis. I toured around America, away from most cities, with a pop group called New Kids on the Block. I went to places like Kentucky and Dallas and Houston. And there I found a whole different America, full of very different people with very different attitudes. They seemed gentler, slower, friendlier, less in your face. I met some lovely people, to be honest, but they all seemed a little bit mad too. Crazily obsessed with guns, anti-abortion, religiously zealous, and really into their hunting and shooting and fishing. On this trip I realised, frankly, how big America is. It's absolutely massive. A giant sprawling landmass that can take you 6 hours to cross in a plane, with 300 million people inhabiting it. I came home from that trip feeling definitely a little bit warmer towards America and towards its people, and that warmth was certainly encouraged by the Clinton era. I really thought Bill Clinton was a great president and a fantastically charismatic man. I've seen him speak 2 or 3 times and met him on several occasions, and he was as charming privately as he seemed on a stage. He was also, I think, a man essentially of peace, which America really needed at the time, and that's what made it all the more tragic to me that he had to go because of the 8-year rule, and we got George W. Bush. And he was tested almost immediately with the 9/11 outrage and reacted exactly as we'd feared, like a roughneck cowboy intent on bloody revenge at all costs. For the next 8 years, Bush turned America, which was the most popular country in the world, widely respected as a global policeman, into the most hated country on earth. And by doing so, he brought this once confident nation to its knees. In 2006, I went to work in America on a show called America's Got Talent for Simon Cowell. And what I found was a place consumed by fear, by vulnerability, ravaged by war, natural disaster, and a soon-to-be collapsing economy. And something extraordinary had to happen to get America out of all this. And it did, in the shape of an extraordinary young man called Barack Obama, who burst through the barriers of racism and stupidity to almost single-handedly turn the political and social landscape of the United States right on what I and many others believed was its bigoted, small-minded and insular head. All with a simple mantra of hope and change. It wasn't just America that transformed as Obama worked his magic. I think I did too, travelling across this vast, extraordinary country immersing myself in the culture of the place and meeting many more of the people who live there, I came to realise that my own views about America had been just as, ironically, bigoted, small-minded and insular as they had been. This then is a tale of two journeys, how America went through a stunning new revolution and how I, to my utter amazement, fell in love with her in the process.